You know, David McCormick is not just a very, very important candidate in a very, very important state for a very important seat. He's a dear friend of the family. We've gotten to know him. I know this man. And he's an honorable man. He will work hard on behalf of working Americans throughout the state of Pennsylvania. He is born in Pennsylvania. I was born in Pennsylvania. He knows the state like the back of his hand. He went back to Pennsylvania, go back to his property in Pennsylvania, his family's property in Pennsylvania. He served in the military. He has worked in business. He's exactly the kind of citizen candidate that we need. Bob Casey is an empty suit. Bob Casey's in the Senate because of all the hard work that his father did. Bob Casey, in many ways, is like Kamala Harris. He'll take any position, depending on what he thinks will advantage him. And most of the time, he takes radical left-wing positions, but he's so soft-spoken and dodges the media. He doesn't want you to know. So, David McCormick, how are you, my friend, and how's the race in Pennsylvania?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. You know, it feels great. I'm on the road on my way back to Pittsburgh from Erie, and everywhere I go, I hear the same thing, which is people are ready for change. This inflation economy that's driven up prices more than 20%, in the grocery store 50% of fuel, all due to the spending of Biden, Harris, Casey, the war on fossil fuels. It's really hurting working families. And listen, you're in the middle of it, so it's hard to judge, but I basically think my message of an outsider, a combat vet, a West Point grad, a businessman who wants to solve problems against a guy who is a career politician and so weak and supported all these incredibly liberal policies. You know, what I like to say is, listen, Bob Casey went to the Senate to change Washington, and Washington changed Bob Casey. He's become a screaming liberal and supporting a bunch of positions that his father would have never imagined.
He's nothing like his father. I remember when his father was the state auditor for many, many years, and then he later became the governor. And I don't think his father would recognize his son. But
Yeah.
Tell us some of the positions he's taken. He's definitely sided against, let me just be blunt, against the Jews in Israel, much like Kamala Harris, and is backing this radical element within the state of Pennsylvania.
It's such a lack of moral courage. I mean, listen, this is a guy who supported the Iran deal. That's the original sin, which gave more than $100 billion back to Iran in 2015, which we now know has been used to underwrite Hamas, underwrite Hezbollah, underwrite Hamas, which conducted this horrific butchery. You and I have talked about this on October 7th, the unthinkable. This is a guy who, when Liz McGill didn't have the courage to clamp down on anti-Semitism, put his head down while I called for her to be fired. This is a guy who has endorsed Summer Lee, who is an avowed anti-Semite, who's my congresswoman in Pittsburgh. This is a guy who has this anti-Semitism bill, which is a good bill. It clarifies the definition of anti-Semitism, and he's so weak and so scared of the radical fringe in his party that he can't even get that vote to come to the floor of the Senate, or that bill to come to the floor of the Senate for a vote. This guy is weak when we need strength. He cowers when we need somebody to stand up, and I think Pennsylvanians increasingly see that as I make it clear the kind of leadership I'll bring to the Senate.
I mean, he's another one who attacks Netanyahu. He's another one that has done literally nothing about the growing anti-Semitism in our country, including our big cities like Philadelphia and so forth. He's another one who voted down the line with the Biden economy, which has created this massive inflation, massive interest rates, an economy that is really out of sorts. Is he ever held accountable? Does he ever make himself presented where he can actually be questioned about these things? Or is he like Harris, always ducking?
He's always ducking. He always keeps his head down. You know, CNN came in a couple weeks ago and did an interview on the campaign trail, both of us. And the interviewer said to him on the campaign trail, is there an issue that you disagree with Kamala Harris? He couldn't think of one. He wouldn't say a single thing. This is a person that's voted 99% of the time with Biden-Harris, never puts his head up for anything. But this is dangerous because he's increasingly embracing these radical positions. Let me give you a couple examples. Number one, he has embraced, and you know Pennsylvania, Mark, this just is so out of touch. He's embraced biological males being able to compete with females in high school sports and college sports. I mean, I'm a father of 6 daughters. This is unbelievable, right? This is a guy who has supported wide open borders. He's voted for sanctuary cities. He's voted against the border funding for the Border Patrol. He's voted against the wall. He's voted against the fentanyl initiative. He's voted against Kate's Law, which was the ability to prosecute illegal immigrants that can conduct felonies. He's voted for federal benefits for illegal immigrants. This is so out of touch with where Pennsylvanians are and the crisis that we have on our border because of wide open immigration. And listen, it's just out of touch with Pennsylvania. So that's the key. Is to make it clear to Pennsylvanians that this guy's become a weak liberal who is going to take us down a path in America if he remains in the Senate, which is just devastating. And that's why I think President Trump's going to win, and I think I'm going to win. You know, Kamala Harris is a better bet, I believe, for us in Pennsylvania than President Biden. President Biden was a terrible president, is a terrible president, but had some connection to Pennsylvania. He had come from Scranton. He had spent 50 years spending time in Pennsylvania. Knew every union leader, every county chair. This Kamala Harris she's a San Francisco liberal that holds a set of positions that could not be more out of touch with Pennsylvanians. And Bob Casey defends her every step of the way. That's why I think I'm very optimistic that the common sense leadership of President Trump and the leadership I bring is going to prevail on November 5th.
Now, you've been to the border, which means you've actually been to the teeth, the beef of the border, more than Kamala Harris. You wanted to go to the border. You wanted to see what's going on the border. You saw what's going on the border, and what did you find?
Yeah, I'd say I want to make 3 points, which is amazing. Number one, you're going along the border in Yuma, Arizona. There's this incredible wall. Anybody that says you can climb the wall has never seen the wall. And the wall just stops, Mark. It just stops. And 300 yards away is a storage area where the steel is stacked. This is the steel that we paid for as taxpayers. We paid for the labor, too, to construct the wall, and on the first day of his administration, Joe Biden stopped it. In the middle of the night, I see this firsthand. I'm with the Border Patrol. It's about 2 a.m. 50 people walk across the border. In that group of 50 are 5 military-age men from Syria, 5 Chinese nationals. This is happening every night, border crossings across our southern border, 10 million illegal immigrants, and more than 200 of them who were apprehended, these are the ones that were captured, are on the terrorist watch list. We are taking such huge risk. It's destroying our country right in front of our eyes, but it's also creating risk that may not play out for years to come. The second thing I want to say about is the fentanyl. 4,000 fentanyl deaths last year in Pennsylvania. I had 4 couples that lost a child at my home in Pittsburgh last week. I mean, this, Mark, ripped your heart out. I almost couldn't sit through all 4 stories. And it's because of this wide open border. We lost 116,000 Americans last year from fentanyl. And to put that into perspective, in Vietnam, we lost 58,000 Americans in 8 years. We had 2 Vietnams last year. And this is why the first day in the Senate, I'm going to propose legislation that declares the cartels a terrorist threat. And we should deploy our special operations, our drone capabilities, take out those cartels, take out the manufacturing facilities for fentanyl, take out the distribution networks. That's what it means to get tough on the border, and Bob Casey has been completely out to lunch.
And he's just a rubber stamp, isn't he? He might as well be a rubber stamp for Schumer, a rubber stamp for Pelosi. He's just a person who takes up a seat in the Senate. He doesn't lead on anything. He doesn't really address the needs of the people of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a diverse and complicated state. Different population centers, different industries, different geographies, people with different backgrounds and so forth. He simply doesn't work hard for the people of Pennsylvania,
he really
does he?
He doesn't, and he doesn't put his positions out there, and he doesn't lead on legislation. By the way, just for your listeners, Anybody who wants to learn anything about me, they can go to DaveMcCormickPA.com. I've laid out all my positions. I've written a book, as you know. You were kind enough to have me on your show. I've given a number of speeches about how we should take on the horrible challenges, the crisis we face. Bob Casey has done none of that. He literally just doesn't show up, and he doesn't lead. And we're at a time where we need leaders. And most recently, you probably saw this. Kamala Harris came out and said she wanted to eliminate the filibuster. And Bob Casey, of course, has said he would vote to eliminate the filibuster. Just imagine a world. This is how scary it is. Kamala Harris is president, which I don't think will happen, but could. Bob Casey remains in the Senate. There's a Democrat majority. Imagine statehood for Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., packing the Supreme Court, a new Green Deal beyond anything we could have ever imagined, citizenship for 10 million illegal immigrants. This is why the stakes of this election are just beyond imagination. It is the most important election of our lifetimes, and we got to get President Trump in the office, and we got to get a majority in the Senate. We got to get a strong conservative from Pennsylvania who's going to make things happen on behalf of all Pennsylvanians.
So how does it look right now? I mean, you know the state of play there better than most.
You know, I feel great about it, honestly. And, you know, you got to be objective always when you're in a fight like this. But if you'd have said to me on October 1st when I came in the race, I'd be where I am, I would have been overjoyed. Here's where we are. President Trump in all the polls is either in the lead or tied, and it's certainly margin of error. He's in a better position than he ever was in 16 or 20. And I can feel it on the ground. There's huge support. 80% of Pennsylvanians think we're headed in the wrong direction. Our Republican registration has gone through the roof. We had 1 million more Democrats than Republicans in 2016. We've changed that by 680,000. So we're becoming a red state. And that's wind at the back of President Trump, wind at the back of me. And listen, all my polls 3 months ago, 4 months ago, when you and I talked, I was 12 or 13 down. The last 3 public polls had me tied. Washington Post had me tied. CNN had me tied. Rasmussen has me tied. There is no doubt that I've closed in, and this is a margin of error race. And listen, I'm going to win this thing because the more people learn about Bob Casey and the more they learn about me, I think they're going to see a really dramatic difference between the two of us and strong leadership versus a career politician who's done absolutely nothing.
Again, if people want to help you in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the country, where do they go? DaveMcCormickPA.com. And I'm everywhere across our Commonwealth, and I think I'm making good progress. But listen, it's the most expensive race in the country, Mark. I say that with sadness. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. It is ground zero for President Trump. He's doing great here. He's here. I've been with him every week pretty much. He's here pretty much every week, and he's doing a great job on the stump and energizing people. And this Senate race is one of the most high-profile races in the country. And you know, the thing I say, which I believe in my heart, is I'm doing this because we got to save our country and get things back on track, and that's why I'm running. Bob Casey's doing it because he needs the paycheck. You're doing it, and you're spending your own money, and you're getting contributions from other people too, and it's very, very important. I know you'd be a tremendous asset in the United States Senate. David McCormick, thank you, my friend. I look forward to seeing you over the weekend on my Fox show, Life, Liberty, and Levin.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, as always. Say hi to your great family, Mark. Thank you.
You got it, brother.